Alright, let's dive into something that's been making headlines recently, and trust me, it's a doozy. Imagine this, the Strait of Hormuz, a tiny strip of water that's basically the lifeblood of global oil trade, gets shut down. Chaos, right? But that's exactly what happened after some intense back and forth between the US and Iran. Now, Trump steps in and says Iran has a last chance to sign a peace deal before things get even more, let's say, drastic. Personally, I think this kind of ultimatum-driven diplomacy is both fascinating and terrifying. It's like watching a high-stakes poker game where the chips are global stability and the players are world powers. What makes this really interesting is the timing. Trump's warning comes right after Iran supposedly denied any talks were happening. So, are we seeing a game of diplomatic chicken here? Or is there more to the story than meets the eye? From my perspective, the Strait of Hormuz is the elephant in the room. It's not just about oil, it's about control, leverage, and who gets to call the shots in the Middle East. Trump's pushing for it to reopen literally by tomorrow, which sounds ambitious, to say the least. But here's the thing, reopening the strait is just phase 1. Phase 2. Denuclearization. And that's where things get messy. What many people don't realize is that Iran's nuclear program isn't just a technical issue, it's tied to national pride, regional influence, and decades of mistrust. So, when Trump says this is Iran's last chance, what he's really saying is, play ball or face the consequences. But what does that even mean? Decapitation? That's a term that raises more questions than it answers. One thing that immediately stands out is the role of other Middle Eastern countries in this drama. Trump claims Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar are backing these talks. If you take a step back and think about it, this isn't just a US-Iran issue, it's a regional power struggle. These countries have their own stakes in the game, and their support for the talks could be a game-changer. But here's where it gets tricky, Iran's foreign ministry flat-out denies any negotiations with the US. Instead, they're talking to Oman about safe passage through the strait. So, who's telling the truth? Or is this just another round of diplomatic posturing? What this really suggests is that we're dealing with a multi-layered conflict where truth is the first casualty. Trump's announcement about calling off a large-scale attack at Iran's request. Iran calls it a new lie. Esmail Baghaei, their foreign ministry spokesperson, basically says, nope, not happening. This raises a deeper question, how much of this is real negotiation and how much is just PR? In my opinion, both sides are playing to their domestic audiences while trying to save face internationally. But here's the kicker, with the Strait of Hormuz still closed and energy markets in turmoil, the clock is ticking. A detail I find fascinating is the tentative agreement from June, the Memorandum of Understanding that was supposed to end the conflict. It fell apart almost immediately. Why? Because retaliatory strikes kept happening. This isn't just a failure of diplomacy, it's a failure of trust. And that's the heart of the issue. Without trust, no deal will stick. So, when Trump talks about this being Iran's last chance, I can't help but wonder, is this a genuine offer or a setup for something more drastic? If you ask me, the real story here isn't the ultimatum, it's the fragility of the entire situation. We're talking about a region that's been on edge for decades, with global superpowers and regional players all jockeying for position. The Strait of Hormuz is just the latest battleground. But what happens if this last chance falls through? What's the next move? Personally, I think we're at a crossroads. Either we see a breakthrough that redefines Middle Eastern geopolitics, or we're looking at a spiral into deeper conflict. So, here's my closing thought, diplomacy is hard, but ultimatums? They're risky. What this situation really needs is patience, creativity, and a willingness to listen. But in a world where every move is scrutinized and every word is weaponized, that might be asking too much. What do you think? Is Trump's approach the right one, or are we headed for more trouble? Let me know in the comments, I'm genuinely curious to hear your take.